The room was enormous, larger than any building on Earth. It glimmered with metal and light, walls stretching high and floors polished so perfectly they reflected the faces of those who walked across them. From the windows, the council chamber floated above the edge of a planet, offering a view of stars so bright that even the oldest human astronomers would have stared in awe. This was the Galactic Council, a place where representatives from countless worlds gathered to discuss the fate of entire star systems. Humans had been part of it for decades now, contributing ideas, technology, and solutions to some of the most complex problems in the galaxy. But today felt different. The human delegation moved quietly, exchanging few words, their eyes scanning the chamber with careful attention. They were dressed in the standard council robes, light and flowing, but their posture was tense. For years, they had learned the subtle languages of other species, how a tilt of the head or the flash of an eye could mean approval, suspicion, or dismissal. Today, those small cues felt heavier than usual, almost suffocating. The chair of the council, a towering being with skin that shimmered in shifting colors, tapped its long fingers on a crystalline surface, calling the meeting to order. Representatives from dozens of worlds leaned forward, some with curiosity, others with impatience. And as the discussion began, it became immediately clear why humans had been uneasy. Topics of trade, resource sharing, and technology exchange were debated in their usual formal tone. But behind the words, subtle patterns of exclusion and dismissal were everywhere. When humans offered solutions, they were often interrupted or ignored. When their questions were raised, others waved them away as if their concerns were trivial. At first, it had been bearable. Humans had learned to expect this behavior. But over time, these small slights had accumulated until they became a weight impossible to ignore. Not one human representative, taller than the others, leaned forward and spoke with calm precision. Our systems have encountered a critical issue with energy distribution in the outer colonies. If not addressed, it could threaten thousands of lives. We propose a collaborative solution based on our recent developments. The chamber remained silent for a moment. Then another species responded with a laugh that was meant to be polite but sounded patronizing. Humans always find creative solutions, it said. But you forget that some challenges are beyond your capacity. The words were not aggressive, not outright hostile, but they carried the sting of superiority. The human representative's jaw tightened. Years of working within the council had taught them restraint. They knew that open anger would be dismissed as impulsive, emotional, even dangerous. So they remained composed, simply noting the reply and moving on to the next point. But inside, a fire was growing. A quiet, resolute fire that had been building for decades. As the meeting dragged on, the subtle pattern became impossible to ignore. Humans were included only when convenient, praised only when others wanted to appear polite, and their contributions were often credited to more established species. Every decision about the human worlds was discussed as if humans were children, incapable of understanding the complexities of galactic politics. Every suggestion that came from human minds was examined with suspicion, as though creativity was a threat rather than a gift. The representative glanced at the other humans at the table. They could feel the shared tension, the unspoken agreement that something had to change. Humans were patient, remarkably so, but patience had its limits. For years, humanity had worked hard to prove its value. They had contributed technology that saved countless lives, introduced diplomatic solutions that ended long-standing conflicts, and even helped stabilize entire star systems that had been on the brink of war. Yet, recognition was scarce, respect was limited, and trust was in short supply. A younger representative new to the council whispered, "Do they even notice what we do?" The older human, the one who had spoken earlier, shook their heads slightly. "They notice," they said quietly, "but they measure value differently. They measure it in power and history, not action or results. They don't understand humans yet. And maybe they never will. The chamber seemed to hum with tension. A proposal was being presented by another species, one that would have impacted human colonies directly. The humans listened carefully, noting every clause, every implication. But as expected, their input was dismissed. When they tried to speak up, they were interrupted. Again and again. Each interruption was like a silent insult, a reminder that their voices were not considered equal. The human delegation shifted in their seats, quietly exchanging glances. No words were needed. The decision had been made in their minds long before this meeting even began. Humanity had tried to be part of this system, to play by the rules, to prove their worth. They had given their best to the Council, and yet the Council still treated them as if they were outsiders, as if their achievements meant nothing. Finally, the lead human stood. There was no anger in their voice, only a calm clarity that cut through the chatter of the chamber. "We have given much to this Council," they said. "We have shared knowledge, technology, and guidance. And yet, time and again, our efforts are minimized, our contributions ignored, and our concerns dismissed. We cannot continue under these conditions." A murmur went through the chamber. Other species leaned back, surprised. Some looked offended. Others looked concerned. But the humans continued without pause. "This is not a decision made lightly," the representative continued. "It is the result of careful consideration, reflection, and observation over many years. Humanity values cooperation, understanding, and shared growth. But cooperation cannot exist without respect. Understanding cannot thrive without trust. And growth cannot continue when one's contributions are continually undermined." There was silence. Not the polite silence of protocol, but a heavy, stunned silence. No one spoke. The humans could feel every eye in the room on them, judging, calculating, and trying to determine what they would do next. Then, slowly, the lead human turned toward their colleagues and gave a small, deliberate nod. The rest of the human delegation followed suit. And without another word, they rose, walking calmly toward the exit. Their movements were measured, deliberate, an utterly final dot as they left. The chamber remained frozen. The Council had never seen such an act. Other species began to murmur, asking questions, trying to make sense of what had just happened. But the humans did not answer. They did not turn back. They walked out of the chamber and out of the orbiting station, returning to their own ships, silently waiting nearby. No alarms were triggered. No ships gave chase. The humans simply departed, leaving only a ripple of confusion in their wake. For the first time, it seemed, the galaxy had underestimated humanity's resolve. As they traveled away from the Council station, the humans allowed themselves a moment to breathe. Relief, quiet satisfaction, and a touch of apprehension mingled in the small cabin where they gathered. They knew that what they had done would change everything. They also knew that the galaxy would notice, and that reactions would range from fear to admiration, from confusion to respect. But for now, there was calm. The stars stretched ahead, endless and unbroken, and humanity felt a strange sense of liberation. For decades, they had played by rules designed by others, sought approval from voices that could not understand them, and worked tirelessly for recognition that never came. And now, for the first time, they were free to act on their own terms. In that quiet moment, the lead human looked out the window, gazing at the stars as they passed. A thought, simple and profound, settled in their mind. The universe is larger than any council, any assembly, any group of beings who think they know what is best. And now it belongs to us as much as it belongs to anyone else. And with that, humanity began a journey that would not only test their own limits, but also force the entire galaxy to reconsider everything it thought it knew about the human race. This was only the beginning. The day humanity left the Galactic Council was not the end of a story. It was the start of a transformation that would ripple across countless worlds. And while other species watched from afar, wondering what the humans would do next, the humans themselves felt something they had not felt in centuries: the quiet, powerful certainty that they were finally masters of their own destiny. The moment humanity left the Galactic Council, ripples of confusion spread across the galaxy. For the other species, it was almost impossible to understand why the humans had walked away. Some assumed it was anger, a childish tantrum by a young species unwilling to accept its place. Others thought perhaps it was fear, that humans had seen something they could not handle. But the truth was far more complicated. Back on the ships carrying the human delegation, a quiet determination filled the air. No one was celebrating. There was no cheering, no applause. Instead, there was focus, a calm, careful focus on what lay ahead. Humans had made their decision, and now they had to face the consequences. Every system, every colony under their control, had to be informed and prepared for the coming changes. Communication channels lit up almost immediately. Messages were sent to every human settlement, explaining the withdrawal from the Council. The messages were short, simple, and direct. Humanity was not leaving in anger, and they were not abandoning their place in the galaxy. But they would no longer allow others to dictate their future or undermine their efforts. The reactions were mixed. Some humans felt a sense of pride, understanding that their leaders had finally taken a stand. Others felt fear. Leaving the Council meant losing support, guidance, and access to shared resources. Trade agreements that had lasted decades were suddenly in question. Some wondered if the human species was ready to stand alone. Governments across human space worked quickly. Emergency meetings were held to coordinate the withdrawal. Scientists and engineers were given new directives: maintain self-sufficiency, strengthen defenses, and continue development of projects that had been delayed due to Council regulations. Military forces were mobilized, not in preparation for war, but as a precaution. Humanity knew the galaxy would not react quietly to their sudden independence. Beyond the human worlds, the Council itself struggled to process what had happened. The other species debated in hurried, chaotic sessions. Messages were sent, asking for clarification. Envoys were dispatched, but none were allowed past the borders. The humans had anticipated this. Every step of the withdrawal had been calculated carefully, ensuring that no one could force them back before they were ready. As the days passed, it became clear that humanity's exit was not temporary. No representatives returned. No diplomats sent messages asking for meetings. Trade routes once dominated by human fleets were suddenly empty. Systems that had relied on human technology and support began to struggle, showing how integral humans had become in many areas of the galaxy. This absence caused ripples that no one had expected. Species that had counted on human support for medicine, for energy management, for conflict resolution, suddenly realized how dependent they had been. Hospitals began facing shortages. Starports struggled to manage energy flows. Entire colonies found themselves in a state of confusion. And through it all, no human response came, only silence. Inside human space, life continued, but it was different. The withdrawal from the Council gave humanity a sense of control they had never experienced. Decisions could be made quickly, without waiting for approval from others. Projects that had been stalled for decades now moved forward at full speed. Scientists worked on energy technologies that had been restricted by the Council. Engineers designed ships that pushed the boundaries of speed and durability. Explorers prepared for journeys into regions of space that had previously been off limits, but freedom came with responsibility. Humans could no longer rely on the resources or protections once provided by the Council. Every colony, every ship, every station had to maintain itself. Supply chains had to be rebuilt. Defenses had to be strengthened. Humans were no longer part of a larger system. They were alone, and the galaxy was watching. Fear among the other species grew. Rumors began to spread, painting humanity as unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Some believed that humans were preparing for war, building massive fleets in secret. Others feared that humans were racing toward technological advancements that would leave everyone else behind. And while no one could confirm these suspicions, the uncertainty itself was enough to cause tension. Meanwhile, humans continued their work quietly. Colonies on distant planets were reinforced. Starships were retrofitted with new engines capable of greater speeds. Laboratories produced breakthroughs that had previously been delayed. But despite these advancements, the humans did not boast or flaunt their progress. They understood the importance of patience and subtlety. They were preparing for a future that was still uncertain, a future that would require both strength and caution. Communication between human leaders was constant. Meetings were held across light years, connecting the largest and smallest colonies through secure networks. Every decision was made with consideration of its long-term impact. Every project was evaluated for both benefit and risk. Humans were learning quickly how to operate independently, and they were determined to do it well. As weeks turned into months, it became clear that humanity was not only surviving outside the Council, it was thriving. New alliances formed within human space. Trade networks were established with careful neutrality, avoiding entanglement with other species' politics. Human society became more self-reliant, more innovative, and more united, but the galaxy did not forget. Observers continued to watch human systems from a distance. The sudden absence from the Council created a vacuum of influence. Species that had relied on human leadership in the past struggled to fill the gap. And though no direct confrontation occurred, the sense of tension grew, simmering like a storm on the horizon. Within human fleets, there was a sense of purpose unlike anything seen before. Every engineer, every pilot, every scientist understood that their work mattered, not just for their own survival, but for the survival of humanity's vision. For the first time, humans were making decisions entirely for themselves, without interference, without oversight, and without the subtle limitations imposed by the Council. Despite the growing tension, humanity did not seek conflict. They did not issue threats. They simply moved forward, quietly, methodically, and with clear intent. They strengthened their defenses, expanded their colonies, and pursued advancements that had previously been impossible. And all the while, they watched the galaxy carefully, understanding that others would react, and that those reactions could shape the future in unpredictable ways. It was during this time that the first real shockwaves of human independence began to ripple outward. Trading systems once dominated by human fleets began to experience shortages. Long-established supply chains collapsed or slowed dramatically. Colonies that had relied on human engineering and technology faced unexpected challenges. And yet, even as the galaxy struggled, humans continued to adapt, innovate, and grow stronger. Every challenge became an opportunity. Engineers developed new systems to replace what had been lost. Scientists created technologies that improved efficiency and safety. Colonies became self-sufficient in ways they had never imagined. Humanity had not just left the Council. They had begun building something entirely new, something that did not depend on approval, recognition, or support from the rest of the galaxy. And slowly, other species began to understand what was happening. Humans were no longer a species constrained by the rules of others. They had found freedom, and they were using it wisely. What some had assumed was rebellion or fear was, in fact, a careful and deliberate plan. Humanity had stepped away from the Council, not to challenge the galaxy, but to reclaim its own destiny. By the end of the first year after leaving, the message was clear. humanity had not disappeared, nor had it faltered. It had only grown stronger, more united, and more capable than ever before. And while the galaxy debated, argued, and speculated, humans continued to quietly prepare for the future, one that no one else could control, influence, or predict. The human leaders often gathered to remind themselves of why they had chosen this path. "We are not leaving out of anger," one would say. "We are leaving because we deserve to chart our own course." Another would add, "We owe it to every colony, every citizen, every explorer to act for ourselves, not for the approval of others." And so, humanity moved forward, silently but deliberately, leaving behind the structures that had once constrained them, and stepping into a future they would define for themselves. They had left the council, but they had not left hope, ambition, or determination behind. In fact, those qualities burned brighter than ever, guiding every decision, every innovation, and every step along the way. By the time the second year came, the galaxy had begun to pay attention. Rumors of human advances spread like wildfire. Some species watched with admiration, others with fear. But no matter the reaction, humanity remained focused. They had chosen independence, and they would prove that the choice was not only wise, but necessary. In every corner of human space, people spoke quietly of the day they left the council, not as a moment of anger, but as a moment of awakening. A realization that their strength, creativity, and resilience did not require validation from others. And while the galaxy tried to comprehend what had happened, humans were already preparing for what would come next, expanding their knowledge, reaching farther into space, and building a future that belonged entirely to them. And so, life continued. As humanity settled into its independence, life within human space began to thrive in ways that had never been possible under the shadow of the Galactic Council. The withdrawal had not been a simple act of defiance. It had been the result of careful observation, deep thought, and a clear understanding of the truth that had remained hidden for centuries. The real reason humans left the Council was not immediately obvious to anyone outside. To the other species, it looked like anger, impatience, or frustration. Some assumed that humans had overestimated their abilities and were acting recklessly. But the human leaders knew better. They had uncovered something that shook them to the core, something that explained decades of subtle obstruction, exclusion, and manipulation. It started with documents, records, and files that the Council had never intended humans to see. Hidden archives from centuries ago revealed a pattern that could not be ignored. The Council, it turned out, had never planned for humans to grow too powerful. Humanity had always been allowed just enough technology, just enough access, and just enough influence to contribute, but never enough to truly dominate. The older species had subtly controlled humans' rise from the very beginning, shaping the rules and limiting opportunities. The realization was shocking, even for those who had long suspected it. Humans had believed they were partners in the Council, that every effort they made to contribute to the galaxy was valued equally. And yet, the evidence was clear. Humans had been watched, evaluated, and deliberately constrained. Decisions about trade, technology, and exploration had been manipulated to keep humans dependent and limited. The human leaders, gathered in the central ship that now acted as the hub of operations. They had reviewed the information carefully, analyzing every detail, questioning every assumption, and confirming every fact. What emerged was undeniable. The Council's benevolent appearance had always been a mask. Beneath it lay a complex web of control, fear, and secrecy aimed at preventing humans from reaching their full potential. "This is worse than we imagined," one leader said quietly, staring at the data displayed on the holographic screen. "They've been shaping our progress for centuries, keeping us just strong enough to contribute, but never strong enough to challenge them." Another nodded, lips tight. "And yet, They never expected us to find out. They never thought we would put the pieces together. For the first time, there was no debate. There was no hesitation. Humanity had two choices: accept the role assigned by others, continue to work within a system designed to limit them, or step away and claim their own future. The answer was clear. Humans were not willing to remain pawns, no matter how much influence the Council pretended to grant them. The decision to leave was not made lightly. It had taken years to gather evidence, understand the true scope of the Council's manipulation, and develop a plan for withdrawal. Every possibility had been considered, every risk weighed. Leaving the Council could provoke hostility. It could cut humans off from vital trade networks. It could destabilize colonies that had come to rely on the Council's guidance. Yet, despite the risks, the human leaders agreed that remaining would be far worse. For centuries, humans had been patient. They had endured small slights and subtle manipulations, hoping that their contributions would eventually be recognized. But recognition had never come. Time and again, humans had seen their ideas ignored, their technologies withheld, and their achievements minimized. They had been treated as an emerging species to be tolerated rather than a partner to be respected. And now, with the evidence in hand, there was no reason to stay silent any longer. The withdrawal was more than political. It was a declaration of independence. Humans were reclaiming control over their destiny, refusing to allow external forces to dictate what they could or could not achieve. The act of leaving the Council was not a gesture of rebellion. It was a statement of self-respect, a refusal to continue being constrained by hidden agendas. As the news of humanity's withdrawal spread, the galaxy reacted in ways that had been predicted and ways that had not. Many species were shocked, unable to believe that humans could act with such calculated resolve. Some species assumed humans were panicking, fearing the loss of Council protection. Others worried that humans were planning to retaliate or build weapons of unmatched power. And yet, the humans did none of these things. They simply acted in their own interest, quietly and deliberately, preparing for a future of self-determination. Within human space, the reaction was different. Citizens and leaders alike understood that the decision to leave the Council had been based on necessity and principle. Families discussed the implications, young explorers considered the new possibilities, and scientists were invigorated by the freedom to innovate without restriction. For the first time, humans were able to operate without waiting for permission or approval from others. Human scientists quickly began to analyze what had been held back by the Council for centuries. New energy systems were studied, technologies for faster travel were refined, and experiments that had once been forbidden were now pursued with careful precision. Engineers and designers collaborated like never before, pushing the boundaries of speed, durability, and efficiency. Every discovery became a step toward independence, every advancement a claim of ownership over their future. The leadership understood that the galaxy would not remain passive. Other species, once secure in the belief that humans could be controlled, now faced a reality they had never anticipated. The sudden withdrawal had removed a key stabilizing influence from the Council, creating tension and uncertainty across countless star systems. Supply lines faltered, diplomatic negotiations stalled, and colonies struggled to adjust to the absence of human coordination. And yet, the humans themselves remained calm. They had expected these disruptions. They had planned for them. Independence did not mean recklessness. It meant preparation, foresight, and discipline. Every action taken by the human leaders was calculated to ensure stability within their own territories while demonstrating strength and competence to the galaxy beyond. The process of leaving also required careful communication. Humans did not abandon their colonies, nor did they sever trade completely. Messages were sent, outlining new protocols for independence, explaining that humans would continue to cooperate where beneficial, but would no longer allow external forces to dictate their choices. It was a delicate balance, firm but fair, direct but measured. Within months, the human species had begun to transform. Cities on distant colonies adapted to new self-sufficient systems. Starships were refitted with engines and shields that exceeded previous council standards. Scientific research accelerated as limitations were removed, and explorers prepared for journeys into previously restricted regions of space. Humans were no longer constrained by expectation or fear. They were free to define their own path. Even as humans advanced, they remained vigilant. The leadership knew the council would watch, and that rumors, misunderstandings, and fears would spread quickly. They were prepared for attempts at manipulation or interference, but they were confident that their careful planning, combined with the evidence of past restrictions, would give them both justification and the upper hand. The revelation of the Council's hidden control had a profound effect on human society. It was a lesson in resilience, a reminder of the importance of independence, and a call to action for every citizen. Humans realized that they had always possessed the creativity, intelligence, and strength to achieve great things, but until now, their potential had been limited by unseen forces. The discovery also forged a new sense of unity. Humans across countless worlds shared a common understanding. They were responsible for their own destiny. Their futures would not be shaped by others, and their progress would not be constrained by external agendas. The lessons of the past became the foundation for a new era of cooperation, innovation, and ambition. As the first year of independence came to a close, the human species had already demonstrated remarkable progress. Colonies were stable, supply chains robust, and technological advancements continued at a rapid pace. And while the galaxy speculated about the motivations and plans of the humans, those within human space knew the truth. They had acted out of principle, necessity, and vision. The real reason humans had left the Council would eventually become clear to all who observed carefully. They had discovered manipulation, deception, and limitation. They had recognized that their contributions had been undervalued and their potential suppressed. And instead of allowing history to continue in this way, they had chosen to step away, to reclaim their independence, and to prove that humanity could thrive on its own terms, for the humans themselves. The act of leaving the Council was a turning point. It marked the beginning of a new era, a time of self-determination, innovation, and exploration. The galaxy might not yet understand the full impact of this decision, but humanity did. They had discovered the truth, faced the reality, and acted with wisdom and courage. And in doing so, they had set themselves on a course that would not only change their own future, but eventually challenge the understanding of the entire galaxy. As humans looked to the stars, they did so with clarity and confidence. They understood their place in the universe, not as subjects of a council. Life inside human space after leaving the Galactic Council was a mixture of excitement, anxiety, and unprecedented opportunity. For centuries, humans had operated under the rules and oversight of the Council. Even though they had contributed ideas, technology, and solutions, their actions had always been subject to approval, limitation, or quiet manipulation. Now, for the first time, humans were free to act on their own terms, and the effects of that freedom were immediate and profound. The human leaders quickly realized that independence meant responsibility. There were no longer other species to regulate trade, enforce agreements, or provide guidance. Every colony, every station, every ship had to maintain itself. Supply chains had to be rebuilt, defenses reinforced, and new systems developed to replace those that had previously depended on Council oversight. It was a daunting task, but one humans approached with determination, organization, and efficiency. Colonies that had once relied on council-provided energy systems and medical supplies began to produce their own. Engineers adapted existing technologies, improving efficiency while creating redundancy systems that allowed colonies to function, even if outside support was unavailable. Hospitals and medical facilities shifted from dependence on interstellar supply networks to local production of critical resources, ensuring that every settlement had what it needed. Humans also invested heavily in education and research. Knowledge that had been restricted or regulated by the Council was now fully accessible. Scientists, engineers, and explorers were given the freedom to experiment, innovate, and push boundaries. New projects were launched with an intensity that had never been possible before. Entire fleets of research vessels were deployed, exploring the outer reaches of human-controlled space, mapping regions that had once been off-limits, and testing new technologies. Life in human cities and colonies changed as well. Citizens felt the shift in energy and purpose. There was a sense of collective determination, a shared understanding that humanity's future was now fully in their hands. Young people trained in navigation, engineering, and diplomacy, knowing that their skills would be crucial in the coming years. Communities became more self-reliant, fostering a culture of cooperation and innovation. Every individual was aware that the path forward required focus, resilience, and adaptability. One of the most significant changes was in human fleets. Ships that had once been constrained by Council regulations were now retrofitted with cutting-edge engines, reinforced shields, and advanced navigation systems. Pilots trained under new protocols designed to maximize speed, efficiency, and safety. Fleet commanders held frequent exercises to prepare for scenarios ranging from exploration to defense. Every mission, every exercise, and every upgrade reflected humanity's newfound independence and its determination to secure its place in the galaxy. Despite the progress, humans were careful to maintain a balance. They did not seek conflict or dominance over other species. They understood the galaxy would be watching, interpreting every move. Instead, humans acted with discipline, building strength quietly and deliberately, focusing on self-sufficiency and long-term stability. Communication systems were expanded and strengthened. Colonies that had previously relied on Council networks now had secure, independent channels. Information flowed quickly, allowing humans to coordinate across light years with precision. Leaders could make decisions based on accurate data, and emergencies could be handled promptly without waiting for outside approval. The flow of knowledge created a sense of unity and security, reinforcing the idea that humanity could thrive without reliance on the Council. Innovation accelerated rapidly. Scientists developed new energy systems capable of powering entire colonies with minimal waste. Engineers designed ships capable of greater speeds and longer journeys than ever before. Medical researchers unlocked treatments that were once delayed or restricted, ensuring that every human, regardless of location, had access to advanced care. Every breakthrough was a reminder of what humans could achieve when unrestricted. Colonies themselves became more resilient. Local governments implemented infrastructure projects to strengthen housing, transportation, and communication systems. Renewable energy sources replaced older, less efficient models, ensuring stability even in remote locations. Farming and food production systems were adapted to work independently of interstellar supply chains. Each improvement reflected the understanding that humanity could no longer depend on others for survival or advancement. Explorers prepared for missions that had previously been impossible. Maps were updated, long-range sensors deployed, and fleets equipped with experimental drives. Humans ventured into regions of space that had once been restricted by the Council, studying new stars, planets, and phenomena. Every discovery was documented and shared across human space, creating a rapidly expanding body of knowledge that would guide future generations. Within human space, Society became more united. Citizens understood the challenges they faced and the opportunities before them. Communities organized around shared goals: security, innovation, and growth. Education emphasized problem-solving, creativity, and critical thinking. Every individual, from scientists to pilots to engineers to everyday citizens, contributed to a collective effort that strengthened humanity as a whole. Despite their focus on growth and self-sufficiency, humans were not isolated. They maintained limited contact with other species, engaging in trade or communication when it served mutual benefit. But they did so on their own terms, without compromise or submission. Every interaction was deliberate, measured, and protective of humanity's autonomy. The sense of freedom was transformative. Humans had always been capable, but under the Council, their potential had been limited. Now, they were free to explore, innovate, and expand. Every colony, every ship, and every person felt the weight of possibility. There was excitement, yes, but also a clear understanding that independence required discipline, planning, and responsibility. Defense remained a priority. Even without immediate threats, humans prepared for potential challenges. Fleets were trained to respond quickly to emergencies. Colonies fortified with advanced systems, and communication protocols ensured that any threat could be detected early. This preparation was not paranoia. It was prudent foresight, reflecting humanity's commitment to protecting its autonomy. Human leaders also encouraged cultural growth. Art, literature, and storytelling flourished, reflecting the spirit of independence and exploration. Citizens were reminded that freedom was not only about survival and advancement, but also about creativity, expression, and identity. Museums, theaters, and educational institutions thrived, ensuring that humanity's culture remained as strong as its technology and defenses. As months passed, humans continued to demonstrate remarkable resilience. Colonies operated smoothly, fleets were prepared, and innovations continued at a rapid pace. Humans were not only surviving, they were thriving, proving that independence did not mean vulnerability. On the contrary, it had strengthened them, making them more capable, adaptive, and united than ever before. The other species in the galaxy watched with a mixture of curiosity, confusion, and concern. Humans had left the Council quietly but deliberately, and now they were demonstrating that independence did not weaken them. Some species began to respect this display of capability and discipline. Others feared what humans might achieve next. Rumors and speculation spread, but humanity did not respond with threats or arrogance. They allowed their actions to speak for themselves, letting progress and preparation demonstrate strength. Every decision within human space was guided by a commitment to long-term stability and growth. Leaders understood that the galaxy might react unpredictably, and that misunderstandings could escalate if not managed carefully. But humans were patient, methodical, and disciplined. They continued to strengthen infrastructure, improve technology, and explore the unknown, always with an eye toward the future. By the end of the first year after leaving the Council, human space was transformed. Colonies were secure, fleets were advanced, and citizens were united in purpose. The withdrawal had not been an act of rebellion or revenge. It had been a carefully considered step toward independence. And humanity had proven that it could succeed. Life inside human space was no longer defined by limitations imposed by others. Instead, it was defined by possibility, ambition, and self-determination. Every innovation, every colony improvement, and every exploration mission reflected the strength of a species finally operating on its own terms. The humans themselves understood the significance of what they had achieved. Independence was more than a political act. It was a lesson in resilience, unity, and capability. Every citizen, from the youngest explorer to the most experienced leader, felt the weight of that responsibility and embraced it with determination. And so, human space flourished. Freedom had brought challenges, but it had also unlocked unprecedented opportunity. Humans were no longer just participants in a larger system. They were architects of their own future, explorers of uncharted territory, and creators of a society defined by its values, ingenuity, and resilience. The universe beyond watched carefully, trying to understand what humans would do next. But within human space, there was no doubt. Citizens lead. As humanity continued to strengthen itself inside its own space, the galaxy beyond began to take notice. At first, the withdrawal from the Galactic Council had been seen as a sudden, almost emotional act. Many species assumed that humans had overreacted, that they would return once tempers had cooled. Others whispered that humans might be afraid or unprepared for the challenges of isolation. Yet, as weeks turned into months, it became clear that humans had no intention of returning, and that their independence was far from a temporary rebellion. Sensors and observation. Satellites from other star systems began picking up unusual activity in human space. Starships moved in organized formations. Construction projects on distant colonies expanded at a speed that astonished outside observers. And massive energy outputs, far beyond what had been publicly known or detected across several planets. Humans were not only surviving, they were growing stronger, faster, and more advanced than anyone outside had imagined. Rumors spread quickly among other species. Some said humans were building secret fleets, massive enough to challenge entire star systems. Others suggested that humans had discovered a new technology, one so advanced it could change the balance of power across the galaxy. Councils and alliances held emergency meetings, attempting to understand what humanity was planning. Envoys were dispatched, but the humans did not respond. They had made it clear contact would be limited, controlled, and on their own terms. Within human space, life was focused but calm. The leaders understood that the galaxy's fear and curiosity were inevitable. They also knew that it was important to act responsibly. Human expansion and development continued quietly, deliberately, and without provocation. Every colony strengthened its infrastructure, every fleet enhanced its capabilities, and every citizen contributed to the overall stability and progress of the species. Real shock for other species came when reconnaissance, drones and occasional probes returned with more than just energy readings. Observers began capturing glimpses of massive shipyards, enormous orbital platforms, and experimental energy cores being tested across multiple planets. The scale of human development was unlike anything the galaxy had expected. Humans had used the freedom granted by independence to innovate at a pace no one could have imagined, and the results were staggering. Some species began to admire humans secretly. They had assumed that independence would weaken them, that isolation from the council would leave humans vulnerable and disorganized. Instead, humans were thriving. Their ability to organize, adapt, and innovate without oversight demonstrated a level of competence and foresight that even the oldest civilizations had not anticipated. Humans were not only surviving, they were shaping a future that was entirely their own. Others, however, were filled with concern and fear. Humans had access to technologies that could rival or surpass those of entire alliances. Fleets capable of unprecedented speeds were being constructed. Colonies once dependent on council support are now self-sufficient and fortified. The galaxy slowly realized that humans were no longer a species to be underestimated. The absence from the council was not a weakness. It was a calculated step toward greater strength, autonomy, and influence. Within human space, leadership maintained strict control over every aspect of development. Expansion was measured, deliberate, and guided by long-term planning. Every decision was made with the understanding that humans were being watched. Every innovation was tested thoroughly before being deployed. Citizens were trained to handle emergencies, maintain self-sufficiency, and respond to potential threats. Freedom, they understood, did not mean recklessness. It meant responsibility, foresight, and careful execution. Meanwhile, communications from human colonies reflected a society united by purpose. Families, communities, and scientific teams understood the broader goal. There was no chaos, no panic, no complacency. The message was clear. Humans were capable, independent, and ready to face whatever challenges the galaxy might bring. This unity in organization became one of humanity's greatest strengths, allowing them to move quickly and effectively in ways that other species could not predict. As the months passed, the ripple effects of humanity's withdrawal became more apparent. Systems that had relied heavily on human coordination began to struggle. Supply lines slowed, infrastructure faltered, and colonies in other regions of the galaxy felt the absence of the stabilizing influence humans had once provided through the Council. Even the Council itself found its authority questioned. Humans had demonstrated that they could operate entirely independently, challenging the assumption that the Council's oversight was necessary for order in the galaxy. At the same time, humanity's approach to the galaxy was measured. They did not seek conflict or aggression. Limited trade continued, scientific data was shared selectively, and explorers ventured into new regions not to dominate, but to learn. Humans had learned from centuries of manipulation that independence required both strength and diplomacy. They acted strategically, knowing that every move could be interpreted in multiple ways by observers beyond their space. One of the most significant changes was in the perception of human technology. Other species had long regarded humans as resourceful, but limited in capability. That perception was now shattered. New energy systems, faster than ever propulsion, advanced defensive technologies, and self-sufficient colonies demonstrated that humans had not only kept pace with the galaxy, but were rapidly surpassing expectations. Reports from outside the human sphere often carried tones of disbelief. "They are building fleets that no one else could manage," one message read. "Their colonies are self-sufficient beyond imagination. Their progress is terrifying and inspiring at the same time." Others warned that humanity might be preparing for something more than mere independence, speculating about strategies and ambitions that remained entirely unknown. Despite this attention, humanity did not respond with arrogance or provocation. Leaders encouraged restraint, patience, and observation. They understood that the galaxy was reacting out of fear and curiosity, and that missteps could create conflict. Instead, humans allowed their actions to demonstrate strength. Every success, every technological advancement, and every stable colony was proof of what humans could achieve without the interference of the Council. Inside human space, citizens felt a mixture of pride and purpose. They had left the Council for reasons of principle, and they were now showing the galaxy that the decision had been justified. Engineers refined systems that had once been restricted. Scientists pursued experiments previously forbidden, and explorers mapped new regions of space. Every step reinforced humanity's independence and capability, while quietly reshaping the perception of what humans could accomplish. As time went on, the galaxy began to understand the magnitude of humanity's choice. The withdrawal was not impulsive. It was deliberate. Humans had discovered manipulation, understood the limitations imposed upon them, and acted with wisdom and foresight. Their independence was a strategic decision, a declaration that humanity would no longer accept control, deceit, or limitation from outside forces. The Council and other species slowly realized that humans were no longer a species to be managed. They were creators of their own destiny. Every new technological advancement, every fortified colony, and every fleet capable of rapid expansion became a signal to the galaxy. Humanity could no longer be underestimated, ignored, or controlled. Some species quietly admired the humans' ability to unite, innovate, and expand under the constraints of freedom. Others worried that humans might one day become a dominant force in the galaxy. But no matter the reaction, humans remained focused on their own growth. They were prepared to defend themselves if necessary. But their primary goal was progress, stability, and the exploration of new opportunities. Within human leadership, the message was simple: act with purpose, act with caution, and never compromise independence for temporary advantage. Every colony, every fleet, and every citizen was part of this understanding. Unity, discipline, and foresight were the keys to maintaining strength in the face of uncertainty. By the end of the first year after their independence, humans had demonstrated something undeniable. They were no longer just participants in the galaxy's system. They were a force of innovation, resilience, and capability. They had proven that independence was not a weakness, but a strength. Observers from other species began to adjust their expectations. No longer could humans be dismissed as impulsive or inexperienced. The careful, deliberate progress within human space had shown that humans could act strategically, respond quickly, and innovate at a scale unmatched by most civilizations. And yet, humanity remained quiet. They did not seek dominance, confrontation, or recognition. They allowed their accomplishments to speak for themselves. Every colony, every ship, and every technological breakthrough was a testament to the potential of a species freed from manipulation, and to the wisdom of those who had guided humanity toward independence. The galaxy began to understand, slowly but surely, that the humans had not left the Council out of anger or fear. They had left because they had discovered the truth, understood their own potential, and chosen to take control of their destiny. Their independence was deliberate, thoughtful, and inevitable once. Years had passed since humanity left the Galactic Council, and human space had grown stronger, more united, and more capable than ever before. Colonies were self-sufficient, fleets were advanced, and citizens had adapted to life without the guidance or oversight of outside powers. Humanity had proven to itself and to the galaxy that it could thrive independently. But there was one final act left, one declaration that would announce humanity's presence and strength to the universe in a way that no species could ignore. The decision was not made lightly. Human leaders had considered every possibility, every consequence, and every reaction. This final step would not be a show of aggression. It would be a message of clarity, purpose, and foresight. Humanity would reveal that it had become something more than a member of the Council or a species within the galaxy. It had become a force guided by its own principles, creativity, and determination. Preparation began years in advance. Advanced fleets were retrofitted with engines capable of incredible speed. Communication systems were upgraded to send messages across vast distances without delay or interference. Scientists developed signals and broadcasts designed to be understood universally, free of ambiguity, and impossible to ignore. Every detail was planned to ensure that the message would be clear. Humanity had awakened, and it would chart its own destiny. Within human colonies, people felt the anticipation building. Citizens, explorers, and leaders knew that the galaxy would soon witness the culmination of humanity's long journey toward independence. Schools, research facilities, and communities prepared for a surge in activity as scientists and engineers worked together to finalize the fleet, the signals, and the technology that would announce humanity's true presence. The air was filled with quiet excitement and shared purpose, a sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. The message itself was carefully designed. It was not a threat, nor a demand. It was a statement of fact, a declaration of identity. Humanity had grown, learned, and strengthened. It was no longer constrained, limited, or manipulated. Every action, every achievement, Every innovation was now guided entirely by humans themselves, and the galaxy would be made aware of it. Finally, the day arrived. Across human space, fleets moved into position. Signals were calibrated and synchronized. Citizens watched the preparations with awe, understanding that they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered across generations. The message of humanity's independence was about to be sent. A clear and undeniable signal to every species in the galaxy. The first broadcast reached neighboring systems. Sensors and communications networks captured the signal, transmitting it to every nearby civilization. The message was simple, powerful, and unmistakable. Humanity was awake, fully independent, and capable of shaping its own future. It was a declaration that humanity had taken control of its destiny and would continue to grow, innovate, and explore without interference. Reactions across the galaxy were immediate and varied. Some species were astonished, unable to believe the level of sophistication, coordination, and strength that humans had achieved. Others were fearful, realizing that humans could no longer be ignored or underestimated. Councils and alliances scrambled to understand the implications of the broadcast, while envoys were sent to observe, gather intelligence, and attempt diplomacy. But humanity had anticipated this. Every precaution had been taken, every step calculated, and every possible reaction considered. Inside human space, the response was calm and focused. Citizens, leaders, and explorers knew that their purpose had been achieved. The broadcast was not intended to provoke conflict. It was intended to inform, clarify, and establish humanity's identity in the galaxy. The message was clear. Humans had left the Council to secure their freedom, had worked tirelessly to strengthen themselves, and were now ready to operate entirely on their own terms. Meanwhile, fleets continued to move, not as a threat, but as a demonstration of capability and preparedness. Ships equipped with the latest technologies and experimental engines patrolled borders, conducted exercises, and maintained readiness. Every action reinforced the message of independence and strength without aggression, showing that humanity could protect itself and its colonies while remaining disciplined and strategic. As the signal reached more distant systems, reactions began to ripple throughout the galaxy. Species that had long underestimated humans began to reassess their assumptions. Entire colonies and civilizations took notice, realizing that a new force had emerged, one that was disciplined, innovative, and unified. Speculation ran high. Some believed humans were preparing to challenge the Council or expand aggressively. Others realized that humans were not threatening anyone. They were simply asserting their right to exist, grow, and explore freely. The broadcast also inspired curiosity. Explorers from other species sought to learn more about human space, eager to understand the society that had achieved such independence so quietly and deliberately. They were met with careful diplomacy, limited contact, and clear boundaries. Humans were willing to share knowledge selectively, but only on terms that respected their sovereignty and ensured continued self-sufficiency. Inside human space, life continued with purpose and energy. Citizens celebrated the success of the broadcast, not with fanfare or arrogance, but with a sense of accomplishment and unity. Communities had worked together for years to prepare for this moment, and now they could see the results of their efforts. Engineers continued to innovate, scientists continued to explore, and fleets remained ready. Independence had become more than a principle. It was now a tangible, undeniable reality. Over time, the broadcast began to have lasting effects. Neighboring species adjusted to the new reality of human independence. Trade networks were cautiously rebuilt, alliances reconsidered, and diplomatic protocols revised. Humans engaged selectively, maintaining independence while building mutually beneficial relationships. The galaxy slowly began to understand that humanity had not left the Council to rebel or attack it, had left to secure its own future, to grow, and to claim its place among the stars on its own terms. The moment of the broadcast became a historical milestone for humanity. Citizens spoke of it with pride, understanding that they had participated in an event that would define their species for generations. Children grew up knowing that humans had overcome manipulation, discovered their potential, and acted with wisdom to secure independence. Schools taught the story not as a tale of rebellion, but as an example of foresight, unity, and responsibility. Explorers pushed further into space than ever before. Colonies expanded to previously unexplored regions. Scientists conducted experiments and research projects that had been impossible under the Council. Every action reflected the combination of independence, capability, and discipline that humans had demonstrated in the years since leaving. Humanity had not just survived without the Council. They had thrived. The Council and other species slowly came to understand the full magnitude of what humans had achieved. Independence had not weakened humanity. It had strengthened them. The ability to innovate freely, act decisively, and unite under a common purpose had created a species capable of unmatched resilience and potential. Humanity had become a model of what could be achieved when a civilization operated without manipulation, restriction, or interference. For the humans themselves, the broadcast was not the end, it was a beginning. They now had the freedom to explore, innovate, and expand in ways that had once been impossible. Every citizen, every leader, and every explorer understood that independence came with responsibility. Freedom was not a gift, it was earned, maintained, and respected through action, foresight, and unity. Human fleets continued to patrol and explore, ensuring the safety of colonies and the security of human space. Scientists and engineers pushed the boundaries of technology, developing innovations that would take humanity even further into the stars. Communities continued to grow, teach, and strengthen, creating a society that was resilient, capable, and forward-looking. Across the galaxy, humans became a symbol of what independence could achieve. Other species studied their methods, observed their progress, and adjusted their assumptions. The quiet determination, discipline, and capability of humans became known, not as a threat, but as a testament to what a united, self-reliant civilization could accomplish. And so, humanity entered a new era. The broadcast had announced their independence. Fleets, colonies, and citizens had demonstrated it. Now, the galaxy would watch, adapt, and learn from the emergence of a species that had claimed its destiny. Humanity had left the Council, yes, but it had also awakened to its own power, potential, and purpose. Every day, humans continued to explore, invent, and grow. Every decision was guided by principle, foresight, and unity. Every colony and fleet reflected the capability of a species that had discovered the truth, claimed its independence, and acted decisively to secure a future entirely its own. The day humanity sent its message to the galaxy became a moment that would be remembered forever. It was a declaration of strength without arrogance, of capability without aggression, and of independence without chaos. Humanity had proven that it could define its own destiny, and the universe could no longer ignore it. From that day forward, the galaxy viewed humans differ.